Watchkeepers is a tabletop role-playing game that puts you in the shoes of desperate insurgents in the near future who fight against an intergalactic alien species of oppressors, where you have to go beyond your human limits to defeat the enemy and free the people of Earth. The game operates on a highly detailed roll under D100 system that is heavily reminiscent of the design by Steve Perrin and Greg Stafford, the same system that would go on to power RuneQuest and Call of Cthulhu, among others. In this video, I want to show you the basics of this game's theme and mechanics, as well as what I think is most interesting about it thus far, and then my honest thoughts and a wish list of what I'd love to see in the final game. I'll cut to the chase here and tell you up front that I think this game goes all the way in delivering on the promise of a human insurgency fighting an alien occupier. That premise is simple enough to conjure up. I mean, we've been living with the concept since War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells, published back in 1898, but there have been countless awesome imaginings of this premise since then. Independence Day, Battle Los Angeles, Edge of Tomorrow, District 9 appears to be a strong influence in this game. They Live is an all-time classic. Then you have TV shows like Falling Skies, V, Colony, and The Fifth Wave. At the time of this recording, it is crowdfunding or about to be crowdfunding on Kickstarter. I'll leave a link below to the campaign. The premise of Watchkeeper is this. It's the year 2045, and for the past 12 years, an alien empire called the Concordat has sought to subjugate and mutate not only humanity, but all life on Earth. Naturally, there has been resistance, but there have also been human collaborators who officially help the Concordat. Your job is to operate within a cell and on occasion manage broader actions of that cell to degrade, dismantle, and destroy both collaborator operations and infrastructure. Right off the bat here, I had one main question, and it's because I'm a visual person and a sci-fi nut and a watcher of movies, but I just had to know, what do the aliens look like? What is their nature? What are their physical abilities and limitations? Well, we get an answer. Here they are. And I love it. This is a great basis for the entire game. These aliens are gross. They're completely different from hominids. They float. They have breathing flaps and lidless eyes that produce blood-like saliva. But here's the thing. If you're running Watchkeeper as a GM, you're not going to have your players see or encounter one of these things for many sessions, and you may even give them conflicting accounts of what a real Concordat alien looks like. And the reason for that is that this game is meant to be a gritty, uphill, desperate battle against the aliens who have spent the past 12 years, with the help of traitorous human collaborators, building out a nightmarish regime of oppression. Take a look at what the game wants you to do. Things like assassinate collaborators, ambush supply lines, attack checkpoints, deface or destroy statues or buildings, and obviously kill any Concordat aliens if you manage to get to one, but that's not supposed to happen with any frequency. Essentially, you're a low-level guerrilla fighter. That's the world you're stepping into here. The cell you belong to can be anything from part of an organized resistance to ideologically driven zealots, to criminals, to refugees. Actually, it could be all of these things at the same time. But I think a fun part of the game would be to work this out amongst the players. The cell is sort of a character all its own. The makeup of your character is largely pretty familiar if you've ever seen, played, or read a BRP-based game like Call of Cthulhu. I think my biggest takeaway here is that it's very focused on minutia. 8 individual body parts can be injured, and in fact, any armor that you wear will only protect specific body parts, so you have to track that as well. You have to track fatigue, which is actually a central point pool in the game because you spend it to use abilities on top of accumulating it from various actions and activities. If you pile on too much fatigue, your character will start to suffer nasty mechanical penalties. Morale is another point pool that you'll need to track. You make a morale check at the end of every session where morale has been lost to see if you pick up a degenerative psychological condition. There's a really fun and thematic concept in the game called Xenosis, and it's another point pool like morale where you check it at the end of a session to see if you've picked up an alien mutation. Mutation by interdimensional forces in the game are ever present, especially if and when you start venturing into these hot zones where interdimensional chaos runs rampant. There are 3 kinds of mutation that you can suffer from, but check these out. It's just wacky, sometimes really gross stuff. And really, if you unpack the implications of these mutations, the game's world begins to resemble a mutant year zero kind of world where at least a portion of the population is walking around with some nightmare-inducing freak show mutation on their face or body. There are 6 class archetypes, or fates as they're called in this game, and they each give you a choice of 2 traits and 1 ability at the start. Traits and abilities are the special things you can do, either passively or actively, but abilities actually accumulate fatigue points if you do them. Incidentally, there's a fate called Watchkeeper in the game of Watchkeeper. In this example portrait, we have Old Snake. And yeah, this is a roll under D100 system, so you're going to have a whole ton of skills. The higher your skill rating, the higher chance you'll meet or roll under that rating with a D100 roll and pass the test. One thing to note here is the amount of detail written for each skill. This is how the abilities and the traits look as well. It's a very mechanically detailed game, one that makes this character sheet completely inadequate. If you want to actually write down all of the mechanical details of your character, you would probably just need to have several sheets of blank paper. Spending experience points to gain new abilities is kind of fun. You unlock them on a grid that is different for each class, sort of like a skill tree. Except my only criticism here is that even though the bonuses unlock by proximity, they don't seem to have much relational relevance to each other. They seem to be sort of randomly plotted on the grid. Here's a starting inventory for you. Again, this game is very detailed. Surprisingly, it's pretty easy going on ammo. You basically only have to reload if you go full auto with your weapon, but everything else about inventory is pretty detailed. Here's a list of some of the normal weapons in the game. I don't know what most of these look like. It would be great if there was an illustration for each one. And this, like I mentioned earlier, body armor only protects certain parts of the body, and it will do damage reduction on incoming damage, which of course slows down combat. But let me skip to the exciting part here, the alien weapons. Here's some weapons that started off as human created, but have been modified by weird alien technology. Each of them has a special feature or ability, and aside from the mutations in this game, you really start to see this game's theme shine through here. And then check this out. These are all the strange kinds of alien ammunition, but you can actually use them in any weapon, which is very forgiving if you ask me, but this game needs some soft points like this to counteract all the restrictive rules minutia. There's even alien clothes that you can wear, which of course all comes with very detailed mechanics. The game also has you rolling a skill check to do cell actions, which are done in broad stroke scenes that take place during downtime and which tell a wider story of what your whole party is doing in the local area. You also track your cell's reputation with the local population, and doing things for the community will increase that reputation. As that number climbs, you will enjoy more narrative bonuses. And no matter how much you want to avoid it, your guys are going to have to go into a dead zone at some point. One of those areas that has been corrupted by interdimensional distortions and anomalies. There's an encounter table here, as well as a variety of extremely useful alien artifacts that you can find. And finally, you can describe a headquarters, although there are no mechanics attached to that. Alright, so here are my thoughts on Watchkeeper so far. And mind you, this version I showed you in the video is not the final game. They're still working on it. Cons. Rules minutia. It's a personal thing, but I'm not a huge adherent of the BRP style of play where everything is tracked and there's a mechanical feature for everything. I think plenty of people enjoy this approach to RPGs, but I think if I ran Watchkeeper, I would shave off a lot of the details in order to deliver the theme and the vibes of the setting more effectively. Gray layout. At first I couldn't put my finger on it, but eventually I realized that the actual layout of this game in its current state just has too much gray in the backgrounds. I would personally punch up the contrast and then add distressed paper textures on the background of each spread. It can be kind of a drag to read and reference a spread with this much washed out gray. Pros. Premise is rock solid and intriguing. Like I mentioned at the top of the video, I think that this game goes all the way in delivering on the promise of a human insurgency fighting an alien occupier. The mutations, surgically implanted alien genetics, which I actually didn't mention earlier, the alien weapons, clothing, and technology, the human collaborators, it's all done with a lot of thought and care, and I think it really drives home the feel of the setting. Alien design is perfect. I really like the physiology of the enemy aliens. It's creepy, weird, and completely unearth-like. I think for fun, if I were running this game though, I would have 3 or 4 sub-variants of them for different purposes and to keep players off guard. Wish list: illustrations for every weapon. If you've watched this channel for very long, you've probably heard me say it. I think most RPGs should have all their weapons illustrated, especially if those weapons are exotic, rare, or completely made up. I know that art can be expensive, or if you're doing it yourself, at the very least, time-consuming, but illustrations of the primary tools your character uses in a game centered on violence and combat are essential in my opinion, and they would enhance the visual impact of the rulebook immensely. I know that violence isn't the only thing you can do in this game, but it's kind of the main thing you do in this game. Full roster of enemies. From a GM perspective, trying to put together a scenario for players with a game like this requires enemies. And the premise of this game is very fertile grounds for a ton of interesting enemies. You have all the human collaborator types you can spec out, as well as a galaxy of mutated human monstrosities and mechanical enemies like drones, and then you have the Concordat themselves, which again could be broken out into several subspecies. Dedicated sheets to track cell and HQ. I'd really like to see a formalized sheet for tracking aspects of the insurgent cell that the players belong to, as well as a sheet for HQ details. At the end of the day, Watchkeeper feels like a game that understands its assignment. The fantasy of being a desperate insurgent fighting a superior alien occupier is all here, and it's executed with a level of detail and commitment to body horror that I think most evokes District 9 vibes, and I'm here for it. The only real question is whether the weight of its mechanics will enhance that experience for you or get in the way of it. For me, that's going to depend heavily on how much refinement happens before the final release, but if you've been looking for a grounded, brutal sci-fi resistance RPG that leans hard into survival, consequence, and body horror, you might want to give this one a look. The link's down below. And remember to like and subscribe for more RPG reviews, and join the channel as a member for exclusive videos and content. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.